Oh, you see the
Ooh,
countdown?
okay. Yeah, I can see the countdown. Very professional.
Hi, all. Laura here. We're trying something new at Unchained. We'll be doing live streams every other week of a new show called The Chopping Block between four crypto investors Haseeb Qureshi and Tom Schmidt, managing partners at Dragonfly Cap. Sorry. Managing partners at Dragonfly Capital, and Robert Leshner and Tarun Chitra, managing partners at Robot Ventures. In each episode, Haseeb, Tom, Robert, and Tarun will discuss recent events in crypto. We will also release these conversations on the podcast, so you can always tune in later, but the live streams will be the earliest you can catch the shows, and in general, the videos will have all the visual content, whereas the podcasts will, obviously, only be audio. I've already watched a few of their discussions, and they're fun. Plus, they give you a wealth of insight into the many happenings in the space. I just wanted to pop in why, number one, there's a live stream going on, and number two, why I am not a part of it. So, with that done, now I will turn it over to Haseeb.
Thanks, Laura. And thanks for chaperoning, making sure that we're behaving ourselves. So
Have a great
without
time, you
further
guys.
ado, without further ado, let's kick off the show. So hey everybody, welcome to the Chopping Block. Every couple of weeks, the four of us get together and we give an industry insider's perspective on the crypto topics of the day. So quick round of intros. I'll start with Tom. Tom is the DeFi maven and the master of memes. Whoa, did you just jiggle the
No, I
lights?
didn't. There's a little power surge over here. So sorry about
Oh
that.
wow,
You
that
say his
was very
name and
timely.
the DeFi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah,
oh
It
my
was
God,
intentional.
there's some
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. You got your own light show going on over there. Then we've got Robert, crypto connoisseur and captain of Compound. Robert is also, for whatever reason, he's hanging out in a little girl's bedroom for reasons that he cannot fully explain.
It's where I
And
podcast.
then what's that?
It's where I podcast from.
It's got it. That's your studio. And then we've got Tarun, the Giga Brain, and Grand Poobah at Gauntlet. And lastly, there is myself, Haseeb. I am Chief Hype Man at Dragonfly. So the four of us are early stage investors in crypto, but I want to caveat that nothing we say here is investment advice or legal advice or even life advice. So taking everything you hear here with a grain of salt because it's crypto and you should do your own research. How is everybody doing today? Also, Tom, you just got back from Taiwan.
I
How's
did.
it being back in America after spending like all of COVID in Taiwan?
Yeah, it's been mixed, I would say. I obviously like the COVID situation a little bit better in Taiwan, but it's nice being back and, seeing my friends and family and eating Mexican food. And I'm feeling, it's not my office, but, I got the very patriotic, like, poster in the background. So people always ask me about that. It's Bruce Springsteen. So anyway, it's good to be back.
Nice. And overall verdict on Taiwan after having been there for a little bit over a year, yeah.
Taiwan number one. It's number one for a reason. Yeah, it's awesome. There's a great crypto scene there, and it's really blossoming. A lot of cool new projects coming out, and a lot of great entrepreneurs, and people are just really great. Food's amazing. It's beautiful. I have nothing but good things to say. I really miss Taiwan. I'm hopefully going to go back next year as well.
Nice. And overall, guys, how's been your holidays?
Well, New Year's is in 2 days, and I'm about to get away for a very short R&R, and so we'll see soon. But Happy New Year to everybody in advance.
Nice.
Yeah,
Everyone I know has COVID, so I'm in like
I am honestly. So I could not get a booster because all of the places that give booster shots here are super backed up. So I am kind of terrified of Omicron. I actually took a flight a few days ago and I did not get sick. I think maybe I'm asymptomatic, but I'm just like at this point I think so many people I know have Omicron or recently got Omicron that it just feels to me like everybody is going to get this thing. It's just like going to be the
it's going to
global
be the
vaccine.
end. This is
Yeah.
going to be how it ends. Is basically
It might well be.
bring it.
It might well be. That's how it seems right now.
Yeah.
Here's my dark contrarian take on COVID, and then we can go straight into the crypto stuff. I think that COVID, in a twisted way, is actually pro-crypto, and it goes to the argument that I think a lot of people are losing faith in governments based on the response or response to COVID in general, and distrust in governments equals a search for alternate approaches, whether it's monetary systems or government forms of communication and consensus. And I think long term this will be one major footnote in the history of why crypto succeeded.
I could see that. I remember early when COVID first started, it was really not obvious at that time how COVID was going to affect crypto. And in retrospect, I feel like maybe it should have been obvious that crypto, that like everybody being at home and just being really antsy and bored and going half crazy was going to cause a lot of, it was going to be very bullish for everything going on in crypto. But I totally agree with you that in retrospect, so many of the trends that COVID kicked off have been really, really good for the adoption and the growth of the crypto industry.
Yeah, even just living online, being digital, right? Like the fact that fundraising and team building and like everything that we do now is happening remotely, like was not a given, 3 or 4 years ago. Certainly some people were pushing for remote work and remote investment, but people were still used to, fly to the Bay Area to like do all their fundraising rounds. And like, it was weird to like have a remote team. And now that's almost kind of becoming more the norm.
Yeah, I mean, you may always see me say this on Twitter, but I am so happy that crypto and COVID killed San Francisco. They
San Francisco had it coming a little bit.
1-2 sucker punch. It was like,
yeah.
It was great.
It's true. I mean, we recently did our team offsite for Dragonfly, and it used to be that like 30 to 40% of all of our entrepreneurs were in the Bay Area, and during our offsite we invited a bunch of our entrepreneurs there, and we're now down to like less than 10% of all of our founders are in the Bay, and I just don't know that it's going to come back. So it does feel like the world has fundamentally changed, and the allocation of capital has fundamentally changed, and I don't think it's going to revert now that all of that intellectual capital, all of that sort of movement freedom, and the inability to extract rents from forcing everybody to be in the same place and pay the same landlords and pay the same coffee shops and pay the same taxes, all that is kind of gone now. And so many, I mean, even out of New York, like I just heard that there's a lot of folks leaving New York now and going to Miami for similar reasons. As people have realized that, like, okay, the BIT license and the New York State tax is just like so onerous. As long as we have the crypto people together, we don't really need all the other stuff that is bundled with living in New York. I don't know. Tarun,
have you been to Miami and found anyone who isn't an investor in crypto?
Didn't Uniswap go down to Miami?
Where's Waldo?
That's true. Didn't Uniswap
their
go down?
office is in New York.
Wait, are they still?
They have an office in Soho. Yeah.
Oh, I thought they got up and moved.
There's like
Is
30
Hayden still
people
there?
in that office. No, he's
Wow.
traveling a lot, but he might be
Okay.
the exception. What I'm saying
I
is
see.
that maybe like the investor or like the CEO is moving to Miami, but the teams are not.
Yeah.
See, my
I feel
bet
like-
was that the first. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like that is the trend. Is it's not like, oh, like Austin and Miami are like killing San Francisco and New York. It's like, no, like, one founder's in the Bay, and then there's like a eng lead in New York, and then they have a designer in Europe, and then they have like a data person in Asia, and it's kind of just like, yeah, like that's the sort of profile of team that I see these days. Not like everybody's in Miami. Miami's the new San Francisco.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. It does. I mean, Miami just has such a different vibe than either New York or San Francisco. Like you import people into Miami. You don't hire people from Miami, generally speaking, if you're a tech founder. So certainly not in crypto.
A hot take I will have is that I think Magic Leap failed because they were based outside of Miami.
Burn.
just one.
I don't know enough about Magic Leap to be able to weigh in there, but okay, fair enough. All right, so let's get into the meat of it, guys. So I wanted to take this semi-inaugural episode to look back on all the craziness that's happened this year, because as we've been talking about, it's been a totally bizarre and wild 2021. So I wanted to look back at biggest wins, biggest losses, biggest lessons from 2021. So without further ado, let's get into it. The way we're going to do this is we're going to announce the particular topic/competitions, like biggest winner, biggest loser, etc. And we're going to each go around and explain our choice, because a lot of people in the audience might not know what we're even talking about. So we'll explain our choice in just a few sentences, and then we'll go around and each share. So we'll start with biggest winner. Who wants to go first? Biggest winner of 2021.
I'll go first. I think when we were doing your reflection for this, I think one thing that's always difficult in crypto is to not just choose what asset went up the most in price and what went down the most in price, because that's obviously like a part of it, but it's also part of the story of like product adoption, right? And like what actually success looks like for some of these products and these protocols. And so for me, biggest winner in 2021 was alternative L1s, or different smart contract platforms to Ethereum. So obviously people are super excited about Solana and Avalanche and Luna, and those really seem to be doing well in the market, but also just in terms of developer adoption. But I even think about stuff like BSC, which kind of kicked off the year as sort of this whole alternative EVM chain sort of mania kicked off, or Polygon, or even Phantom, or I think even increasingly like we see different exchanges developing their own chains and things like that. And so I think 2020 was, I think, all about Ethereum and DeFi summer, and everything was happening on Ethereum. And this year, obviously, stuff was happening on Ethereum, but increasingly it was happening on alternative L1s. And so that's kind of been the story in my mind over the past year or so. It's just been increasing adoption and traction. And also, price has been part of the story for these other smart contract platforms.
That's a good point. I think you covered a lot of ground there actually in all the
Sorry.
other ones I mentioned. There's just some overlap I think in some other people's answers too. Tarun, Robert, you guys want to go next?
I'll go next. I think the biggest winner is actually publicly traded crypto things. I think there's two great examples of things that really did not exist in the public eye a year ago, but came into the public eye this year. So Coinbase and MicroStrategy, I think both have come to the forefront as publicly traded crypto companies that in their own ways are acting as huge legitimizing factors for the space, that are creating a lot of awareness from investors that weren't as aware of crypto financial markets previously. But I think those two in some ways are the biggest winners, and create sort of a winning halo for the rest of the ecosystem. I think they're going to set the groundwork for a lot of public companies to follow. And if you ask me, 12 months ago, are there going to be like lots of public crypto companies? I would have said, no, not really. They're going to stay private for a really long time. You're going to see a lot of crypto existing truly only in private markets. But if you ask me now at the end of 2021, I think the answer is, yeah, I anticipate next year, the year after, there to be a lot more publicly traded and on equity exchanges, not on crypto exchanges, publicly traded crypto-based businesses that are real. We had Long Island iced tea blockchain or whatever years ago, but they were all, they were jokes, right? Now we're starting to see
Hey, Overstock.com was a real business.
True. But I think this was the year that the public equity markets won by having two flag bearers for the asset class.
Where do you think that's going to come from? Do you think it's going to be more like existing public companies adopting, crypto like Block or Square? Or do you think there's going to be companies going public? Do you think we're going to see like spot ETFs?
Yeah, I mean, and this also goes to having at least futures-based ETFs in public markets. I didn't want to include that because I think it's more negative than positive, at least in a lot of people's minds. But I think we're going to see more exchanges go public over time. There's a lot of really solid, domestic and international exchanges that I think have an opportunity to go public over the next 2 years. I think we're going to start seeing custodians going public over the next 2 years. And I think we're just going to see a lot of crypto native businesses, becoming publicly traded instead of existing publicly traded things adopting crypto. Although Visa was a big, player this year that's already like an extremely large, well-known publicly traded company that very seriously has been going into crypto. Obviously, Facebook/Meta has been dabbling for years and years and years, but never really went live. And so, I think we're going to see a lot more crypto native businesses go public over the next 2 years.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think in very Robert fashion, it's like you're the only one advocating for the TradFi companies in this. The rest of us are all picking like random meme coins. Tarun, what was your pick?
Yeah, so I didn't have one pick. I wanted to actually give like a category, kind of three things that broadly were like the biggest winners in their category, and like they're not comparable in some sense. But I guess I have a tiny different take on the alt L1 season. I actually think that there's this class of alt L1s that did do well, and there's a whole slew of ones that were quite disappointing relative to what they were billed as in 2017 and 18 and maybe in 19. So I think the ones that really stood out, the interesting thing to me was, the layer one with the hardest developer onboarding process period, really won, which was Solana. I think, obviously AVAX and Luna had crazy good times too, but Solana was really out of the dark. I mean, in my mind, it was always extremely hard to write smart contracts for them, but they sort of willed their way into kind of, winning the L1 war. The other two I want to mention were, of course, OpenSea. I mean, they obviously had kind of this record-breaking year. Maybe they'll be, I know it's not exactly Robert's TradFi public company pick, but they could be very easily, in my mind, one of these public company picks. And you're not successful, I feel like, at an equity business in crypto if you don't have tons of haters, and the fact that they've been vampire attacked should already tell you that. Vampire attack refers to basically people dropping a token to your users to try to get them to move to a new platform. And the last one I wanted to say was Lido. So staking derivatives were, a theoretical murmur in 2019. There were some academic papers written 2020, but in 2021 we got a ridiculous percentage of Ethereum, and now Solana in different staking derivatives, and I think that is going to be a really big market over the next 5 to 10 years. Nice,
those are great choices. Well, so I'll wrap things up on biggest winner. So I was a little too non-committal, and so I gave my answer as a tie between Dogecoin as being one of the biggest winners. I don't think originally I had Elon Musk, and I was like, well, he's won on too many other things, so I'll just put Dogecoin instead as being the biggest winner in his stead. I mean, Dogecoin kind of came out of almost nowhere. I guess it's always been around. It's always kind of been a thing, but like just the absolute staggering levels of demand and excitement around Dogecoin just blew my mind. And probably like the one breakout crypto story of the year. If there's one from a mainstream perspective, it's probably Dogecoin, which is bizarre to say because of course it's not the largest by market cap, but it does feel like it was like the word cloud of crypto this year. I feel like Dogecoin was the biggest. And then second on winners for the year, I put Kyle Simani. So not everyone might know who Kyle Simani is, but he is one of the co-founders and managing partners of Multicoin Capital, which led the seed round and led the Series A of Solana. And so he is now a very, very wealthy man. And I understand that he now does all of his conference call-ins from his Lamborghini. And he's just like, it's funny because one of the things I'm going to talk about later is about EOS. And he was somebody who the entire crypto community, not the entire, but many people in the crypto community basically shit on in 2018 and 2019, particularly for his call on EOS, and claiming that he thought EOS was going to be really successful. It was going to be this super high performance layer one. It was going to make these trade-offs around being less decentralized in order to get better performance. And EOS didn't really become that, but he took a bet on Solana saying like, no, okay, but maybe EOS wasn't it, but Solana is going to be it. And turned out he absolutely nailed it. And Solana has been a smashing success, and kudos to him for sticking it out and believing in his thesis. So
yeah, everyone needs a redemption arc. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
pound for pound, by far the most successful investor of 2021 is Kyle Simani.
I mean, I heard someone claim that the Solana seed round is the highest IRR investment in venture history. I don't know I haven't checked that number, but it could very well be.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, so that's biggest winner. Let's move on. Next up, we have best mechanism. So this was this was requested by Tarun, and so I thought, all right, why not? Let's throw it on there. Best mechanism. Tarun, given that it's your category, why don't you take it away?
For sure, yeah. So I think there was a very weird website that showed up in about March or April, late March, early April 2020, which used a lot of Greek language and linguistic, loose linguistic technique, and it was completely written about the temples in Greece, and different types of goddesses and gods were associated to the pieces of this protocol. But this protocol turned out, in spite of the fact that the docs were kind of impossible to read, and in spite of the fact that it seemed like it was a scam, it turned out to be one of the most successful and most copied and forked smart contracts on Ethereum-based chains. A sort of rough, quick analysis that I did showed Uniswap v2 is the most copied contract, most forked and redeployed contract. And then Synthetic's Minter contract is number 2. Now, I'm ignoring things like Open Zeppelin's, like Safe Math and stuff, because those get inlined and there's all sorts of technical details. So this is more for fully deployed contracts. And number 3 is Ohm, which is this protocol. And it really took me at least 3 or 4 months to wrap my head around why this thing was able to grow and get forked so much. But you can basically think of it as, our first step towards a system where a protocol manages its own liquidity by issuing debt-like instruments to people. And it was a smashing success. I mean, there've been probably tens of billions of dollars in the Ohm contracts on multiple chains. And so I think they deserve best mechanism. I'm working on trying to analyze it formally, because I think there is something a lot deeper there that is a good lesson for people. Because I think there are a lot of other mechanisms that are extremely, you would think like fixed interest rate loans that maybe would catch on, but none of them have been able to, and part of it has to do with sort of some of the things that are hidden within Ohm.
It's fascinating.
Good mechanism.
Sounds like a detective novel. Yeah.
Yes. I of course HFSP.
Deep inside Olympus DAO, there is a secret that we're going. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
The hiddens of the temple, the hidden secrets of the temple.
Yeah, this feels like a Dan Brown. Feels like a Dan Brown novel somewhere in there. I like it. Okay, I'll go ahead. Best mechanism. I chose ESD. So actually, I just looked up the price.
That was last year.
Well, no, so it was last year, but it collapsed this year and then redefined itself. So it was actually collapsing right on Jan 1 is when it slipped below 90 cents. And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to count that as this year. And so for those who don't know, ESD stands for empty set dollar. And basically, it's probably beyond the scope of this podcast for me to explain how ESD worked. But suffice it to say, it was absolutely batshit crazy. It was a stable coin that is kind of sort of stable only if you squint and really believe in it. And that's ESD. It was not stable at all. But in a way, it was a predecessor, I feel like, to Ohm, and kind of inspired more of the modifications around what a stablecoin can be and what it even means to be a stablecoin. Like, for example, the notion that you can call something a stablecoin and not have it be worth $1. I feel like ESD invented that. And so I think Ohm owes a big tribute to ESD for the idea of, we can just call this thing a stablecoin even when it's not stable and not worth $1. But it kind of aspires in some loose way to be worth $1. I thought it was great. And I think it also, a big part of mechanisms in crypto is teaching. And I feel like ESD was probably one of the most teachable moments of 2021, is teaching people that hoping that something is true is not sufficient for actually making it true, and that mechanism design really matters. And so I feel like ESD, I think actually internally at Dragonfly, for us, it was one of these moments where a lot of people at the firm learned how much mechanism design matters.
I as one of the people at Dragonfly who is into ESD, I will say I think the spiritual successor to ESD is actually Axie Infinity. Because the lesson here is that if the mechanism sucks, it doesn't matter as long as you get enough people to believe in it, and then you have an amazing war chest that you can use to build something better down the road. And I don't know if they actually executed super well on it, on the idea, but they did sort of generate this idea that you can sort of hype first and build later. And I think that's honestly kind of like what we're seeing now. Like Olympus is now doing like V2, Axie's reworking the game. Like you can sort of build a community and then like get this war chest and then back into something good, as opposed to like, nailing something off the bat and being sort of perfectionist at V1 launch.
Well, to be clear, ESD right now, I'm just looking at it, has a $2.6 million market cap.
Yes. I think there was a concept and there was an idea
Okay.
and there was an execution on the idea, but the concept is what happened.
Fair enough. Tom, what's your pick? Best mechanism?
I forgot we were doing this category, but I'm gonna go ahead and say UniV3. I feel like UniV3 was hyped and rumored, and people, all these sort of ideas floating around of like what it could possibly be. And I feel like it actually kind of blew everybody's expectations out of the water. There was a lot of FUD and a lot of concern and a lot of criticism when I think it first came out. But I think, as always, you can just look at the market and look at the data and see what works and what doesn't work. And just empirically, UniV3 is crushing it. Uniswap is like running away with the DEX market, especially the AMM market. And certainly, there's some concerns around LP profitability. But I think, if anything, it's sort of created this amazing ecosystem around Uniswap, around like what can we do with this new tool? Like there's teams that are using UniV3 positions to represent options, so you can get different type, or that's like Primitive and Brahma that do basically like options type payoffs, but with LP positions, or people adding automated vault managers. And so I think like this will just continue to pay dividends down in future years as we see people build ecosystems and get really creative on top of UniV3. In addition to just providing sort of the bare essentials of being a really great AMM and providing really deep liquidity on chain. So I think UniV3 the team really crushed it, and I think we've just seen it like just do extremely well in the market as well. So that's gonna be my pick.
Solid. And Robert?
So I'm going to go with a maybe more controversial, but I think, in my mind, the clear winner mechanism designed for 2021, which I think is Convex Finance. This dovetails with, I think, last year's best mechanism, which is V tokens, or locking up tokens to vote in a protocol, which is coming back into vogue very quickly this year and next year, I'd say. But the two of these go hand in hand really well as a combined mechanism. So Curve is, a very simple trading protocol, and they have a governance token that you can stake for some amount of time to change really like how the liquidity of the different markets evolves. What are the incentives to each market? Therefore, how large is each market? How liquid is each market? Convex basically takes advantage of this mechanism design. You could say it's cannibalizing it, or it's parasitic, or it's completely symbiotic, or it's completely value accretive to it. But what it does is it allows people to exert more control over Curve's ecosystem. And what's incredible about this is this symbiotic relationship has created a massive amount of value for Convex as well as Curve. Convex today, this is the freak stat, which I don't think people appreciate. Convex today has a higher floating market cap than Curve does, as a tool built on top of it, which is wild. And it's been, I think, one of the most successful things at creating an exuberance and new experimentation from dozens of other protocols that are now playing in this ecosystem, playing in the quote Curve wars through Convex. It's starting to integrate with lots of other protocols in interesting ways. I think Convex is the number one mechanism of 2021.
Yeah, on the chat, someone thought I said Ohm is number 3. I meant Ohm is definitely number 1 in my.
He said Ohm is 3,3. That's what he said.
Exactly. But I want to give an honorable mention to Robert's point, Abracadabra / MIM, which is basically doing what Convex did to many other ecosystems at this point.
Okay. Let's move on. I'm realizing that we're going to have to move a little bit faster in order to get through all these because we picked a ton. Okay, we're moving on to biggest loser now. Biggest loser of 2021. Tom, go.
This is going to be controversial. I have Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I feel like, has really just fallen out of the conversation. like new people I talk
Wow.
to interested in crypto
We're about to
aren't
get
asking about
canceled.
Bitcoin. New investors aren't asking about Bitcoin. From a price action perspective, it has really like just done super poorly. I think year to date it's done reasonably well because it started so low, but in a few weeks time it'll basically be flat year over year. And so I think there's just so much enthusiasm has left from Bitcoin, and it kind of has to like struggle to sort of figure out a narrative to define itself now, because I think because now it actually has competition, right? Like for the past 10 years or whatever, everything else was kind of vaporware. Nothing else really like you could make promises, you could sort of make narratives around things they were working on, but Bitcoin was Bitcoin. It had the legacy and it had sort of the understanding. And now like, and I'll sort of talk about this later, like there are really compelling alternative narratives to the Bitcoin narrative, and there's a lot more just frankly like things to do that are a lot more encompassing than sound money. And I think that has kind of sucked a lot of the air out of the room for Bitcoin sales.
That's a bold but very reasonable choice.
Bold
There you go.
choice, Tom.
I only have one tiny question. Which was Lightning or Bitcoin in your mind?
So this is actually what's weird. Lightning is actually doing really well. I don't know if you've looked at like Lightning channel capacity in Bitcoin terms, but it's gone crazy over like the past 6 months. So the thing that like I never thought would happen is happening, which is like Bitcoin has not done well and Lightning is doing super well. So it's a very strange sort of world that we're living in right now. But yeah.
Seems like El Salvador has actually been, and Strike in particular has actually been a big catalyst for that.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Yeah. Okay, Robert, biggest loser.
So this is an esoteric one, but I think the Grayscale arbitrage trade, which was at the heart of a lot of activity in the crypto markets in general, it drove huge flows of capital for years and years and years, was the biggest loser this year. So to walk people through what happened and why this is important, there used to be a trust called the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. And this thing for years traded at a premium to the value of the Bitcoin that it held, because there was really no good way for a lot of people to like buy Bitcoin. They weren't going on Coinbase and buying Bitcoin. They were like sitting on their E-Trade and they were like, how do I get Bitcoin? Let me buy the only product that's available through my brokerage account, which was like this publicly traded trust. And for that reason, the trust always traded more than the value of the Bitcoin inside. Well, this year it flipped from a premium to a discount, and now it trades at a fraction of the value of the Bitcoin that it holds. And this thing has like $15 billion of Bitcoin in it. And so for years, hedge funds were feasting on this mechanism. They were basically like subscribing, creating new shares of the Bitcoin trust, and then selling it to retail at a premium, taking their money back and doing it again. It drove huge amounts of borrowing demand for Bitcoin and stable coins and all of these different things so that you could do this trade. At the end of the day, it's one of the primary causes of like what was a lot of the borrowing demand in the ecosystem. Well, this year it flipped to a negative, and it stayed negative for for the entire year. The discount gets worse and worse and worse. And all of the different traders that were participating in this trade and had been doing so successfully for years all got smoked on this. And it changed, I think, a lot of the flows of the capital markets of crypto in ways that people notice and in ways that people don't notice. But underneath the surface, I think this was the biggest event of 2021 for the crypto native institutions.
Yeah, notoriously, a lot of BlockFi's business was built on the GBTC trade.
Oh,
and when that
the
trade
majority, almost their
Yeah.
whole business.
Right, exactly. When that trade blew up, thankfully they've managed to diversify into other sources of revenue, but that was a lot of why they could offer really high rates, is that they were able to make it up on the other side through doing the GBTC trade. So nowadays, and it also reflects very much in interest rates, as you pointed out. This is like the net that you can make on your crypto is just down a lot more when the trade stopped.
Right. When people ask why does crypto do what it does? This is one of the big, drivers of what happened everywhere else in the crypto markets was this trade ending.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Very inside baseball, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully someone listening learned one thing new. So
learned one thing that they couldn't trade on. That's exactly what the show is about. It's about
Sorry.
telling you things you can't make money on.
Well, actually, now you actually can make money on this. So, if you're naturally long Bitcoin, and you expect that one day, the trust is going to get converted to an ETF, which Grayscale has been like publicly like saying they want to do, you can sell your Bitcoin for, let's say, $46,000, and you can buy Bitcoin for the equivalent of like, $38,000 in this trust, and have more Bitcoin.
Wait, is the
Okay.
discount that high?
Yeah, it's like 20%. Yeah, I mean, I can give you the exact
Oh,
number.
wow.
It's huge, right? And so you can basically rotate out a physical Bitcoin into trust Bitcoin, and when it becomes an ETF or is more freely, convertible, you'll have more Bitcoin. Not many people.
Super
are doing
not
this.
investment advice, but
Not
Yeah.
investment advice, obviously. But if you feel like becoming extremely sophisticated on how some of these like basis trades work, someone's loss is someone else's gain.
groovy. Okay, well, my answer is a lot less sophisticated. I said biggest loser this year was EOS/Block One. EOS, I alluded to them earlier as the original darling of multicoin. There's Dan Larimer's, it was his magnum opus, I believe was the way he described it. Unfortunately, EOS, being the Solana before Solana, it didn't really quite work. It was super janky. The economics were a complete mess. And it eventually got abandoned by Block One, in that Block One kind of went off to do Bullish Exchange, which is this big crazy exchange that was capitalized with a bunch of the Bitcoin on EOS's balance sheet. And they just kind of were hanging out. I don't really know what they were doing. But eventually what happened relatively recently is that, so EOS contains in it a perpetual block reward for Block One as kind of like a thank you and a kiss on the cheek from the EOS community. So thank you for birthing us, Father. And recently, EOS decided to fork out the block reward to Block One because they felt that they had been abandoned and that Block One was no longer holding up their end of the bargain, and instead was off, doing all this financial engineering with Bullish Exchange and Voice and whatever else they're doing. And so Block One, to be clear, still very, very rich. They own a crap load of Bitcoin. They're worth, I think, like $2 billion or something, some crazy amount of money. But I'd say biggest loser this year feels to me like EOS, one of the only layer ones that feels like somehow managed to avoid all of the lift on layer ones this year.
I have a very esoteric one, so I apologize. But
Please.
Perfect form.
the number 2 NFT platform in March 2021, what do you think it was? After open
Number
source
two?
and Foundation. Number 2 by volume.
Nifty Gateway. Oh, Nifty Gateway.
There was Nifty Gateway, but there was actually Nifty had like the big bump in like April, May. I think like in March it was OpenSea, and then Hen, which was this OpenSea on Tezos. It was 98% of like Tezos activity for like a couple days. But the interesting thing about Hen was it attracted a completely different type of artists that you had in Ethereum. So Hen was really focused on generative art and on-chain art. So like the NFT would change itself every time it got transferred, or there'd be something kind of more game-like. And they were really at the vanguard of this. And then their founder rage quit earlier this summer and like abandoned all these artists, and like a lot of money that was owed was like stuck in the contracts, and like it was a huge nightmare. And so now it's like sort of being like revived by the community, but it was kind of a big blow up for the generative art world. And so I think actually one of the catalysts for moving to like Solana and Matic for a lot of NFTs was actually Hen dying, because Hen was really, really a big source of alternative NFT volume.
That's
That is a very esoteric one.
Yeah, that is very esoteric. But Hen is coming back a lot, right? I heard that the volumes are actually quite good now.
Yeah.
that
I mean,
true?
the community is trying to take the brand back for sure.
Okay.
I mean, like, look, other people that you've heard of who have more marketing behind them, like Zora and Foundation and stuff, have less volume than Hen often. So it's worth considering that they're like kind of this weird dark horse that artists like a lot more. They invented this green NFT like, proof of stake thing. That was their.
I actually I feel like Tezos like kind of seeded all these like blockchain has this terrible carbon footprint discussion to like push Tezos and green NFTs, which is annoying because then it's like it just becomes this cloud they have to discuss over every other blockchain. But I guess that's how they get carve out their niche, right? It's like why else would you mint an NFT on Tezos versus Ethereum? It's like, well, it's like proof of stake, so therefore it's green, I guess. But even like that idea is sort of has to be sort of forced and created.
Enough. Okay, let's move on to biggest surprise. So I'll go ahead and start on biggest surprise. So biggest surprise of 2021 for me was the rise of the 1 BIP pools on Uniswap v3. So this was something that like I always thought fundamentally about Uniswap, that Uniswap, so I'm not going to try to explain Uniswap very briefly, but with Uniswap v3, you had this ability for different Uniswap pools to charge different prices that basically get collected as a fee for the LPs. And my assumption had always been that by the nature of Uniswap, they're not going to be able to charge super, super tight fees, super small fees for most of these markets because Uniswap just doesn't have enough fine-grained ability to price things really effectively. It's just too gas inefficient, just the natural nature of AMMs that you need some significant fees to charge in order for the whole thing to work. And 1 BIP pools have emerged now on Uniswap v3. They were voted in. I think originally it was like 5 BIP was the smallest fee range, and they upgraded to now have 1 BIP pools, and they're now doing an insane amount of volume. So I think it's both on stables and also isn't it also on ETH USDC or something?
I think it is, but I'm looking at I'm looking at the site right now. I think it's mostly still just stables, but that kind of makes sense, right? I think it would still be very hard for them to be profitable on non-stable pairs.
What's the other dominant? There was another dominant 1 BIP pool. Maybe it's actually come down a lot because people realize they can make money on it. Okay, but then the 5 BIP USDC ETH pool.
Yeah.
I also found that quite surprising that 5 BIPs was like a really stable.
5
so if you look
BIPs
at volume,
outperforms
5 BIPs USDC
30 basis points on the fees you earn.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So that
APY
really
is right.
blew me away. I found that was definitely not what I anticipated was going to happen with the advent of Unity v3, but Unity v3 really proved everybody wrong. So incredible stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Rob, you want to go?
Which category are we on?
Biggest surprise.
Oh,
We're on biggest surprise. I think biggest surprise was this topic. Robert was not prepared.
This topic. I was, researching 1 BIP pools. I was on uniswap.info. The biggest surprise that I had was actually in NFT land, and there was a couple surprises. One is that Beeple 5,000 Days sold for $69 million, and it feels like 20 years ago. Doesn't feel like 2021. Second is Bored Apes flipped punks. Huge surprise. I never would have thought that, even a couple months ago, right? Huge surprise. I think
the floor flipped, not the aggregate.
Right. Yeah, we're not talking aliens versus, some apes, but the floor, which most users consider to be the primary price, because for most people, that's the on-ramp to the asset, right? So the floor, which is what most people would use to get into the NFT, flipped. Huge surprise, mostly due to 2 extremely different approaches to IP. And if you count Beeple, it's like a third approach to IP. But apes versus CryptoPunks really, I think, explain for people 2 different approaches. One is a very corporate approach, we'll call it CryptoPunks, and one is more of a bottom-up approach, which is apes. Still with like a top-down, like creation of new assets and community building, but one in which, it feels like, top-down versus bottom-up. And I think it was a primary driver about why this year saw apes exceed punks, which I never would have thought at the beginning of the year. I never would have thought that Larva Labs would have been restrictive of IP and tried to monetize it for themselves, while apes would give IP rights to their owners and users, as well as lots and lots of airdrops of new assets to their owners to make it feel like owning it had like IP plus plus plus. But in terms of the outcome of these 2 strategies, I was surprised by the fact that it worked so effectively to take what was the Bitcoin of NFTs and have the Ethereum of NFTs flip it.
I very much agree with you. It's surprising and not something I would have anticipated, but I don't think it's because of the IP thing. I think it's just purely like a like art and sort of like what vein of culture have you tapped into? Like Larva Labs, I think, and I think CryptoPunks like just don't have that sort of like mainstream accessibility. We've seen like obviously some artist agencies are like pushing apes through their through their celebrities. So like athletes, a lot of entertainers getting into apes, and that sort of becomes a sort of like mimetic desire thing on top of everything you mentioned around just like engaging more with the community. Larva Labs is like this like orphaned child, or CryptoPunks is like this orphan child that Larva Labs just doesn't really want to deal with, it seems like. But yeah.
Boo, Larva Labs, boo.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. Very surprising, but I think the IP thing again is like it's an esoteric take. It's like crypto people care about that, but I think if you go to like the Bored Ape meetup in New York, people are like they just think it's cool, and it's like the artwork is maybe more accessible or more interesting or like more varied, and for whatever reason, there's probably some random processes to like making it more accessible to people.
Tyrone, you want to go up next? Big surprise?
Yeah. I think that my biggest surprise was sort of the Luna burn, how effective that was, and like how like Luna just like Sol Luna AVAX contingent really sort of bloomed. But Luna grew in a very different way than Solana and Avalanche. Avalanche and Solana really grew from a ton of yield farms, which are basically places where people could put up assets and earn sort of percentage ownership in new smart contracts that are being built as protocols. Luna has very few DeFi protocols on it. There's very little app activity outside of the main payment transfer, and crucially, their staking derivative. So their staking derivative drives like 60 to 80% of the volume demand for the stablecoin that is native to Luna's platform, UST. And Luna had a bunch of apps earlier in the year that had a ton of success, and then that kind of got crimped by regulatory stuff like Mirror. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but all the DEX's front ends, like the official ones, removed Mirror and UMA because of like the sort of regulatory stuff around synthetics. But in spite of that, Luna building these staking derivatives and building this kind of sort of like almost a little bit like an Ohm style liquidity mechanic for borrowing against your stake, really was able to bootstrap like crazy. And then they did this burn where they burned a gigantic portion of the supply. And historically, when chains have done this, like Stellar did this burn where they burned 50% of the Lumen supply, did not do anything, right? The Luna burn is the exact opposite. Both of them have astronomical names, but that's the only thing they have in common. So I think that's like a really interesting thing of like how staking derivatives can actually bootstrap. Staking derivatives combined with a burn can like 5x your market cap on a big cap coin.
Yeah, no, a pretty incredible success story for token economics, being able to really drive the value of a token. Tom, biggest surprise?
I guess sort of going along with Robert, just like the NFT renaissance. I think like the DeFi kind of wave and DeFi summer 2020, like we kind of felt that it was coming for a while, and we sort of saw this gradual buildup of projects that were building in the space and developing, and it sort of it sort of felt like there was a trajectory behind it. I was looking back before this show, like, okay, what were people predicting in 2021, and like what did people miss? And basically, like, obviously people have been excited about NFTs for a while, myself included, and sort of investing in the NFT space, but no one was really like there was no NFT section of people's 2021 predictions. It was like, oh, NFTs are a thing, like maybe people will be into digital art next year. And so I feel like the NFT renaissance, and specifically the different waves of it, I think just caught me by surprise, and I think caught a lot of people by surprise, like how mainstream it was. It's kind of a weird idea, and like I feel like it's kind of nerdy, but like there was sort of that wave in March that was all celebrity driven, like Nifty Gateway, like Grimes NFTs, and like that was when it was on SNL. And I was like, okay, I kind of get that like celebrities want to like sell digital representations of themselves. That makes sense. But the fact that all these like crypto native like PFP things have gone so popular. I just would not have predicted. It's kind of crazy to me that there's people on TikTok explaining how to like set up MetaMask and like switch it over to like Polygon, and that like it's people are really getting in the weeds with it, and it's like very mainstream. So I never would have predicted that. I thought it would have been kind of nifty gateway style forever, but yeah, it turns out there's your 2021 surprise.
Crypto comes at you fast, man.
Yeah.
Things change sooner than you think they can. Okay, we're running low on time, so we're gonna skip forward to best meme. So what was the best meme / moment / event of 2021? Tom, can you throw these up on the screen, because I think we're gonna need you for these.
Yes.
Okay. So Rob, why don't you go first? Rob, you're muted.
Important award category right here.
This is obviously the most important. This is the one we're gonna make a trophy for.
Great meme. I love this meme.
Tom, I feel like we need an NFT of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go and go first. So my pick for best meme was the SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, the shoes that he was wearing at the Capitol hearing. I thought this was absolutely amazing, and I still remember this. So this is just the look of somebody who they have so much money that nothing matters anymore. That is how you tie your shoe when you don't care what anybody thinks. Other than that, you don't want them to shut down crypto. Those are the shoes of a superhero.
Yeah, it's
That's
very
my
on
pick.
brand. Yeah.
All right, Tom, what's you?
I interpreted this very differently. My top meme for 2021 was Web3. I think the rebranding of crypto and like cryptocurrency to Web3 sort of inadvertently has been super genius. Like for whatever reason, that has sort of made it click for people. And now like it feels a little weird to tell people I work in crypto or I'm a crypto investor. I think that kind of almost has like a little bit of a strange or negative connotation. But you tell people you work in Web3, it's maybe a little bit pretentious, but I feel like it sort of made the entire value prop and like the entire ethos of like the whole space click a little bit more for mainstream, even like sort of, Web 2 normal tech type people. So that's my vote for best meme, actually, is like Web3 sort of supplanting crypto as like how people refer to everything that's going on in the space.
That's a good choice. I've also noticed that Web3 has become much more highbrow, I feel like, than crypto.
Yes.
Crypto sounds like you're trying to get rich quick. It sounds like kind of whatever. Yes. Whereas Web3 is like, no, you're trying to remake the web in this new kind of enlightened, more socialist image.
There's nothing better than
feel that.
There's nothing better than venture capitalists saying they're socialists thanks to Web3. Like that's the ultimate 3D chess Euler Escher impossible staircase move.
It's true.
And it's a little bit more inclusive, right? It's like you get the NFTs, you get the file sharing, you get the decentralized Twitter. Like, it's weird to call like Filecoin like cryptocurrency. It's like, well, kind of, but also kind of not really. So
yeah, I feel like AOC does not like crypto, but she does like Web3.
Yeah.
There you go. It expands the tentpole, allows us to bring in more people.
So actually, I just have a question. Provenance, right? I always just thought Gavin Wood came up with it for describing Polkadot, but never marketed it that way because it's the Web3 Foundation, right? They actually had the term way back,
like
before
5 years ago.
5 years ago, but someone then, and I suspect it's A16Z plus a couple other people who are doing more like lobbying stuff in Congress, but like someone revitalized it and ripped out the Polkadot part and said like everything else, like NFTs equals Web3, not Polkadot. And I thought that was also, there's some like interesting dynamic there of like how did that transition happen, because Polkadot has had that name forever and they were hitting the circuit really hard being like, this is the new internet, this is decentralized web, in like the bottom of the bear market, and no one gave a shit. Like literally 0 people gave a shit about that narrative then, and somehow now NFTs made it like tangible.
Couldn't tell you. But I'd love to see some sleuthing on where exactly the Web3 term got popularized from. I think that'd be some
A16Z, 4 characters. That's the answer.
Probably true. Tarun, what's your pick?
In my camaraderie with the Omis, it's 3-3. But I think the best moment for 3-3 was when Grimes, after the Elon Musk separation thing, and Elon Musk was like, NFTs suck, she just like posted this tweet 3-3, and I thought that was the meme of the year for me.
Solid.
I'm gonna
Rob,
go
what
with
about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the real counterculture picks right here. I think all the dog coins, not Dogecoin, but all of the fly by night, like pop up for a week dogs named after Elon Musk, named after some other meme. The recursivity of these memes with the dog coins has gotten so deep that I think they win just in terms of total amount of energy captured by the retail public. These worthless, pointless dog offshoot of dog coins, I think won just based on their prevalence and the amount of market cap that they created off of absolutely nothing but meme this year. Like the fact that Shiba is what Floki and all of these things are what they are. I hate it. I think it's dark. It's depressing. It goes against everything I like and believe in crypto. But the crazy ass dog coins, I think, were the best meme this year.
Solid choice. Solid choice. Okay. In the very short time we have left, let's do rapid fire 2022 predictions. So I'll go first. I'll just list them through. My predictions for 2022. 1, the GameFi bubble pops. 2, we get a DeFi bull market again. 3, I think we're going to see synthetic assets actually start to work in DeFi. For those who don't know, synthetic assets are assets that track the price of some underlying real asset, like the S&P 500 or something like that. And then lastly, I think we're going to get a spot Bitcoin ETF. Those are my predictions for 2022. Tom, what do you?
I got DAO boom. I think Constitution DAO was just the beginning. I think people are going to figure out how to make crowdfunding and DAOs work well and make it work super simply. And we're going to see DAOs go out and doing more real world things and buying stuff. So I think that's going to be a thing. I think crypto native gaming is going to kind of replace GameFi, like kind of stuff like Dark Forest, where it's like you're using a blockchain to do game mechanics and PvP, and like you're playing something through like a smart contract as opposed to just like taking items and put them on a blockchain. I think we're going to see more stuff like that. And I think identity. A lot of teams working on different ways to sort of, now that people are actually doing things on chain, there's real economies and, people trading NFTs, like finding ways to sort of tie identity into what you're actually doing on chain. So I think that's going to be more of a thing going forward in 2022 and beyond.
Okay, Tarun, predictions.
Yes. So yeah, to Tom's point on DAOs, I think DAOs purchases will get wilder than they were this year. Like Tom, Robert, and I are in Pleaser DAO, and it's kind of crazy that was March, where we were like trying to negotiate buying Wu-Tang from the government. But I think it's going to be like 10 times crazier, like a sports team, maybe a tiny nation. I don't know. That one might be a little bit harder, but I think there's going to be some very, very crazy purchases over the next 12 months by collective units. And I think privacy preserving layer 2s are going to have a moment because I think bootstrapping something like Tornado chain is kind of hard. Getting a lot of liquidity, getting like kind of the mechanism working, and there's clearly a demand for Tornado and ETH. So I think that there will be demand for such solutions, but I think it'll be easier to do it as a privacy preserving layer 2, and there's a bridge from multiple chains to it. And things like Aztec and stuff, I have been making some crazy strides. Very impressive. On the ZK side, I think that was like the biggest surprise for me, how far Aztec has gotten. I think there's going to be $100 million plus hack on Solunavax. I'm just calling that as the one.
Solunavax?
Solunavax.
At the application layer or at the protocol layer?
Solunavax.
Solunavax, yes.
Solunavax.
Which sounds like a really bad, poorly made COVID vaccine, but
that's true.
But
we should call it SLA. I feel like it's a good acronym we got to start popularizing.
Yeah.
I think on the application layer, I think like we're overdue for some big hacks there. There's just too much money sitting in these unaudited yield farms on those that can't last forever. NFT finance is going to have its moment. People borrowing against their NFTs, getting leverage on their NFTs. I think fractional, obviously, having such a big year was the first part of that, but like that is going to expand into other types of financial products. And I think blockchain gaming thumbs down. Most GameFi, I don't think you survive. Sorry. I think I think there will be games that are made. I just don't think they're going to be this like, SoftBank throws $2 billion at something and like it like becomes popular.
Shots fired by SoftBank. If you're out there, please sponsor our show. All right, Robert. Last word. 2022 predictions.
So I think 2022 is the year that we get crypto native legislation in the United States, where we have two houses of Congress and an executive branch that ratify legislation around crypto. Doesn't mean it's going to be huge, doesn't mean it's going to create clarity in all different ways, but I think we're going to get real crypto legislation in 2022. I think that we've reached the boiling point. I think there's starting to be an awareness. I think there's starting to be a conversation entering the national stage where I think 2022 is the year that we start to see some real legislation.
And you think the legislation is going to be good or bad or neutral?
Could be either. Could be both. But obviously, I'm hopeful that it's
Come
positive.
on, Robert. This is 22 predictions.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or neutral?
Predicting that there's going to be legislation.
All right, you're fired from the show. You're not invited back to the next one, Robert.
Can't fire.
All right, I think that's true. It is a DAO. We got to put up to a vote.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, this was a lot of fun. Thank you to Laura for having us, and thank you all of you for listening. I think that's it for us. You'll see us in the new year in 2022, and we look forward to DJing with the rest of you. But thanks for having us.
Salunavac.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.